All right, so today we're diving deep into something called the Tesseractal Language V1.2.
Mm.
It's a spec designed to coordinate high-fidelity haptic feedback in really advanced cyber-physical systems.
And it's trying to solve this, this fundamental problem.
Which is,
The tension between us humans, who are adaptive and rhythmic, but let's be honest, inconsistent, and machines, which are just dumb, exact, and completely unforgiving.
okay, so how does it try to fix that?
Well, it uses a combination of the hexabin control bus and the VNEC protocol, and the whole thing is rooted in what the source material calls a metronomic ritual.
A ritual. Let's start there then with the foundation time.
Mm-hmm.
This language, it doesn't just run on a standard clock.
Not at all. Its core frequency, the golden ratio cube clock, comes from the cube of the golden ratio.
Which puts it at about, what, 4.236 hertz?
Exactly. And that sounds almost philosophical, not like engineering.
Right.
But the engineers who wrote this insist it's the opposite. It is not arbitrary. It's tuned to a universal harmonic.
Tuned to what?
It actually correlates, if you scale it right, with the constant ratio in the hydrogen ground state hyperfine splitting.
You're kidding. So the machine's heartbeat is literally tied to a fundamental constant of physics.
Pretty much. And here's where it gets really interesting for you, the operator.
Okay.
That 4.236 hertz frequency aligns almost perfectly with the timing of these things called Schumann ignition events in the human brain.
SIEs, right. Those are the short bursts of high neurological synchronization. They last, what, 3 to 15 seconds?
Precisely. And that biological limit dictates the entire structure. The system's tick is exactly 236 milliseconds.
And the longest phrase?
Is capped at 64 syllables, which is about 15.1 seconds. It forces every command sequence to fit neatly inside that optimal window of your brain's coherence.
So the machine is literally pacing itself to your brain.
It has to.
So if the timing is locked in, how does the machine actually talk?
It talks by, well, sounding out the data. It uses a phonetic grammar, 16 specific syllables for the 16 hexadecimal digits, 0 to F.
Give me an example.
So 0 is the syllable NA, 7 is TO, F is SO.
So you can literally hear the control bus. The sound of the sequence tells you the binary structure.
You've got it. It's an auditory debugging tool, in a way. One 4-bit nibble is 1 syllable, an 8-bit byte is 2.
And the A lane, the grip identity core, that's a key one, right?
Critical. It's a 32-bit word, so 8 syllables. That defines the entire interaction template.
So if you hear a sequence like Neke, Isai, no, to Kiko.
You know exactly which template the machine is running instantly. No need to look at a screen.
Okay, so that rhythmic sound defines the machine's state. But things get stressful. Systems need to adapt.
And that's where the heat scale comes in. It's an adaptive protocol.
Managed by the DA lane, the grip commitment.
Yep. Think of that lane as the system's stress tracker. It measures the intensity or heat using these very precise Q8.4 fixed point values.
And that heat level tells the VNC protocol how to behave.
Right. The VNEC protocol is like the system's emotional regulator, and it has 3 states.
Cold, warm, and hot.
Exactly. Cold is for speed, minimal encoding. Warm is for consistency, so it uses fixed width encoding. But hot is for robustness.
Like in a high-stakes scenario, that advanced cardiac life support simulator they mentioned.
Perfect example. If the heat level spikes, say it hits a value of 0 by 794 or higher, the system flips to hot.
And what does that mandate?
Integrity. VNSC forces it to add an XOR parity nibble to the A0 identity. When stakes are low, you want speed. When they're high, you need that immediate audible redundancy.
So to bring it all together for you, the Tesseractal language is this synthesis. It uses physical and biological resonance.
And combines it with adaptive, stress-aware encoding, all linked to this very strict machine state.
The result is an interface built for extremely demanding fields. Mechatronic labs, VR participation, places where that link has to be perfect.
It forces the human to learn the language, to feel the rhythm.
And that brings us to the fail state, D, CERT, A, and C. When the parser detects an error, recovery isn't automatic.
No, it requires what they call the ritual of resynchronization.
Which is,
you have to emit the 4-syllable FFNUL equals NA. Then you wait for 3 silent ticks. And that's the only silence the system ever allows.
after that, you have to successfully complete 2 consecutive HOT phrases to get back in sync.
Yeah. So that leaves us with the final thought for you to mull over.
When mastery of a system is defined by perfectly executing a mandated silent pause and a ritualized sequence, what does that suggest about the learning curve? Is the end goal for the human operator to become just as ritualized as the machine? Today, we're diving into the Tesseract system. We've got this really fascinating source material. It's a dual system. You have this physical control bus, the XX-bin, and it's tightly coupled with something called a language engine. So our mission today is to figure out how these two very different layers work together to control a single interface.
And right from the jump, it's clear we're dealing with a physical, maybe even a robotic interface, a really complex one.
I'll say.
Well, when you look at the core registers, you're not seeing network IPs or things like that. You're seeing hardware state management.
Yep.
Things like grip identity core, finger contact bits, and the hand logic triad. This is sophisticated tracking for some kind of articulated mechanism.
Okay, so let's trace that control structure, because if these grips and fingers are moving, what or who is actually authorizing that motion? It's not just happening, right?
No, not at all. That authorization comes from D0 GI commitment.
Your heat ladder.
Exactly. That's what they call it in the language layer. And this isn't, a simple on-off switch.
It feels more granular than that.
It is. The commitment is defined using Q8.4 fixed point notation. That kind of precision tells you that even tiny fractional changes in commitment are mission critical. We're talking about a rheostat, not a light switch.
So commitment is a sliding scale. How does the system prevent itself from making, say, an illegal move? What governs the actual flow of control?
That is all handled by E0, the transition edges.
The legal next graph.
The legal next graph. Yes, it's a hard-coded list of 17 allowed movements. For instance, the transition from state 00 to 01 is legal.
Which in the language layer is NA to NE.
Right. And if a requested move isn't on that list, the system just refuses. Full stop. The rigidity is baked right into the control bus.
And this rigidity is then paired with the system's action verbs, the F0 opcodes, which, they sound almost mythological, the gates.
They really do, but they define very complex, very real physical actions.
Like what are the basic verbs here?
You have Yaliquix, which is for rethreading actions. You have Umvardis for binding. Slarnyok for a phase flip, and Loklas, which handles both release and lock operations. And these gates are the only way to change the physical state.
And they have to be delivered through the language engine.
They have to be, yes.
Which brings us to XX speak. How does a language like this actually work?
The structure is, it's brilliantly dense. The core idea is that syllables are digits. They're derived from the core index, so 0 is NA, 1 is NE, all the way up to F, which is SO.
So a nibble, 4 bits, is 1 syllable.
Exactly. Though in some cases, like the hand logic, 3 bits can also equal 1 syllable. It's an incredibly efficient standard for communication.
That must lead to some pretty strange-sounding identity words. Let's take an example from the grip identity core. A0000, which is 19E3779B in hex. What does that sound like?
That translates to the sequence NEKESI no to KCO.
8 syllables.
Right. And what's really fascinating is the bandwidth efficiency. The system doesn't use fixed width words. If you look at A0A, that's a 40-bit word.
Much longer.
But it results in only 9 syllables. N-E, N, so, ne, koki, O-S-A, say. It's all about compressing huge instructions into a tight linguistic package.
Okay, so despite all this rigidity from the legal next graph, there have to be escape hatches, right? For errors or overrides.
There are. You have the F1 override lines. These are explicit escape paths for when non-standard transitions are absolutely required.
Like 0007, which is OVRTR.
Or 0334 OVRNTA. These paths show that exceptions are possible, but they're tracked, registered exceptions, not free movement.
And finally, we get to what feels like the absolute backbone of this whole system, the timing discipline. This thing moves at a pace governed by mathematics.
Absolutely. The machine operates on a clock that's defined by a phi cubed.
Phi cubed, wow.
Which is approximately 4.236 hertz. That means every tick is a very deliberate 236 milliseconds. The core rule is strict. 1 syllable is executed per tick. This isn't about speed. It's about disciplined, verifiable execution.
And the final rule, the one that ties everything, commitment, action, all of it together.
The one critical constraint. No gate without declared heat. Every single physical action, every nullix or loklas, has to be backed by a quantified value from that heat ladder.
It has to account for the energy before it even moves.
Before it moves. The only clean end to an execution is NLL, which is FF.
So what we have is this incredibly coupled system. Physical states governed by a language, a mathematical clock, and this strict rule connecting every action to a measured expenditure. It's all about precision.
And accountability. The whole philosophy seems built on verifying its internal state and its resources before it ever acts on the outside world.
So let me leave you with this final thought. Given that core rule, no gate without declared heat, and knowing that this heat is quantified so precisely with Q8.4 notation, what does that imply? Is this requirement mainly a safety mechanism, forcing the system to declare its energy cost before it moves? Or is it something else, maybe just a fundamental precise accounting ledger required for every single action? Something to think about when you consider the real cost of motion.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Today we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating source. It's called sovereign worship practice.
Which sounds a bit out there, I know.
Right. But it's actually a highly structured framework for managing your own attention. Your intention. We're going to cut through the jargon.
And the place to start is right at the core, with its first principle, the principle of sovereignty.
Which means?
It means that you, and only you, are the legitimate authority over your own attention. That's it. This whole system, this practice, it's just a tool. It's there to serve your sovereignty, not replace it.
I like that. It's not asking you to believe in anything. It's asking you to do something.
Yeah.
And it's skeptical of itself. It runs on this holistic rhetorical architecture.
Which is just a fancy way of saying it doesn't trust pure thought at all.
Yeah, the principle of verification. It states that no internal state is real or considered to exist without a physical confirmation to go with it.
Exactly. No free-floating feelings. And that skepticism is baked right into the architecture. Which brings us to the principle of non-theology.
Okay, so this is important. The system completely avoids anything mystical.
Explicitly. The constants aren't gods, they're cognitive tools. The operations aren't prayers, they're psychological techniques. Success isn't enlightenment, it's just coherence.
Coherence. So how does it actually, enforce that? How does it ground you?
Through 3 layers. The first one is layer 1, the symbolic layer. They call it the A matrix.
And this is where the math comes in, which can seem a little intimidating.
It can, but it's really just about assigning labels. They map these complex psychological states to mathematical constants. So, for example, the L-feel, or the golden ratio, stands for asymptotic desire.
That's striving for something you never quite reach.
Precisely. And then Sol is for bounded interaction, and L is for, organic growth.
Okay, but hold on. Why use something like feeler or your pellet? Why not just use a word like focus or desire? That feels a little, arbitrary.
Well, that's the point. They're chosen because they're not emotional. They're universal, stable concepts.
Yeah.
You're binding a messy human state, like desire, to a perfect measurable process. It forces you to look at the process of striving, not just the feeling.
I see. So the constant is the idea, but you still need to prove you're holding it.
And that's layer 2. Physical verification. The body has to confirm the state.
With the finger positions.
Yep. So if you're invoking the filler state, you have to make a specific physical confirmation, like touching your index fingers together. It's proof. It keeps you honest.
So you've got the symbol, you've got the physical proof,
Yeah.
but what keeps you from just, drifting off?
That would be layer 3, the enforcement mechanism, the temporal layer. It uses something called the theta 3 clock.
And this thing is relentless. Operations have to line up with these super specific 4.236 text phase windows.
Let's break that down. 4.236 text hertz is basically a little over 4 ticks per second. It's a fast, non-negotiable rhythm.
And if you miss the tick, if your mind wanders for even a split second and you miss that window,
the operation is invalid. The system just rejects the input. It's not a failure. It's just you weren't there. You have to be physiologically present.
So what does this look like day to day? It sounds intense.
The actual time commitment is tiny. That's part of the design. 3 minutes in the morning to invoke a constant, 1 minute at noon for a check-in, and then 5 minutes in the evening to reset.
The evening reset, that's the become a 009 operation, right? The transition to the emptiness state, empty set?
Right, but emptiness here doesn't mean a void. The system is very clear. It's just clearing of working memory.
Like closing all the tabs on your browser.
A perfect analogy. You do it by releasing all finger contacts at once while staying aware of the clock. It's a clean, controlled reset, deliberately non-mystical.
And the system is so skeptical of itself, it has these built-in checks. The pre-practice checklist asks you some really tough questions.
The big one being, am I using this to avoid real-world action? It just cuts right through any potential for self-deception.
I love that. And what if you start to want something more? You start looking for that mystical experience.
The system actually has an answer for that, an integrity check. It literally tells you that mysticism is prohibited by its design. It forces you back to basics.
So wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway for you, the whole point of this discipline?
It's all there in their closing manifesto. This is a tool. It's not a truth. It's not an identity. Its only measure of success is coherence across thought, word, and action.
And its promises, well, it's very grounded.
It is. It promises, and I'm quoting here, no enlightenment, only clearer seeing, no transcendence, only deeper engagement.
All you have to do is show up, pay attention, and if you miss a tick, you just try again on the next one.
Yeah.
So here's a final thought. If you had to pick one thing you want to improve, what measurable physical constant could you assign to it? How would you prove that intention with just one finger? Okay, so let's try and unpack this. We are doing a deep dive today into an architectural stack that, I mean, it sounds like something straight out of theoretical physics.
It really does. You've got the mathematical transition Phenomes framework, the finite state tesseract,
And the VNEC V1.2 protocol.
Mhm.
We're talking about a system that intentionally marries, transcendental math with, phonetic encoding.
phonetic encoding, and adaptive redundancy. Yeah. The mission here, what the sources are really getting at, goes way beyond traditional computing. It's about understanding a system built on, well, fundamental principles of nature. This whole idea of resonant computing.
Right. And the thing that just immediately jumps out, the hook, is the core architectural choice. The entire system is anchored in the golden ratio phi.
That's it. That's the foundation.
Well, why use an irrational number like phi to anchor a whole computational system? What inherent stability does that buy you?
Well, that's the thing. That choice dictates the system's heartbeat. It's Farad. The clock frequency is precisely phi cubed.
Phi cubed. So what does that work out to in regular numbers?
It calculates out to just over 4 cycles per second, 4.236 hertz to be specific. By using that proportion, the timing is just intrinsically resilient.
And what's really wild is that this isn't some arbitrary number. The source material, it highlights that this 4.236 hertz frequency is specifically tuned
Tuned to resonate, yeah.
to resonate with fundamental gaps in the visible light spectrum. And it's even correlated with human physiological centers.
Exactly. That's where the resonant quality actually comes from.
So this temporal precision, it must set some pretty strict bounds.
It has to. The tick period, the delta t, is about a quarter of a second. So the system dictates a maximum phrase complexity. Any transmitted phrase cannot exceed 64 syllables.
Which gives you a limit of about 15 seconds. So if your thought is longer than that, you need a new frame.
You need a new frame. You can't just ramble on.
Okay, so if the clock is running on phi, how does this physical rhythm translate into actual data? You mentioned language.
It uses something called the sigma projection. The sigma mapping is the key here. It's the translator.
A translator from what to what?
It translates raw 4-bit hexadecimal data, nibbles into one of 16 specific phonetic syllables.
And the structure of those syllables is brilliant for minimizing errors, right?
Very clever. You've got 4 consonant families, -n, t, k, s, and each is paired with one of 4 vowels, a, e, i, o. It makes the sounds really distinct, very hard to confuse during transmission.
So data is literally audible. Okay, give me an example. If we had the hexadecimal value, say 0FF15O, what would that sound like?
That maps directly to the syllables. S-O-N-A-N-A?
So NAA, is that just a random phrase?
Not at all. That exact sequence is the mandatory NELL terminator.
Ah, so it's the period at the end of the sentence.
Exactly. It signals the system to stop and prepare for the next transmission.
Okay, now let's get to the adaptive layer. The VNEC V1.2 protocol and how it manages security, which is governed by this concept of information temperature or heat.
Right. It's essentially a dynamic defense system.
So how does it decide which data is mission critical and which isn't?
It classifies all data as either cold, warm, or hot. Cold means you're using a minimalist encoding, maybe just one syllable for identity. The system is minimizing its overhead because the data isn't considered volatile.
Makes sense. But what if the transaction is hot tea, mission critical?
Then you maximize integrity. You go into a sort of lockdown. Hot encoding demands the full 32-bit identity word, a parity nibble for checks, and even duplicated edge bytes.
So it dynamically scales its own redundancy based on the perceived risk.
Exactly. Maximum defense when it matters most.
And this precision is all maintained by the system's brain, the finite state tesseract, which uses a rulebook called the 16-state grip ladder.
Yeah, with these incredible names like Piercer and Scaife. But what's truly unique are the logic commands themselves, the gate verbs.
These are the 4-bit opcodes.
Right, but their names have this deeper conceptual meaning. They link logic to human concepts. The XNOR operation, for instance, isn't just XNOR,
It's subverted.
which translates as harmony or state binding. And the CNOT operation is NALIX, or resurrection, which is used for rethreading processes.
Yeah.
The logic itself is conceptually charged.
So you're literally running your computation based on a concept like harmony. That's something else. Okay, so considering all this structure, all this strict timing, what happens when it breaks? What triggers a system halt?
Desynchronization is, well, it's immediate if integrity fails. There are a few key triggers. A HAT parity mismatch is a big one. That means the identity check failed.
Okay.
Or an invalid syllable, sound outside the allowed 16. But critically, it's an unauthorized silence. If the system goes quiet for too long.
For longer than that phi-driven tick period.
Right. It just assumes a disconnect and haunts everything.
And to fix it, there's this 5-step recovery ritual. How is the system reestablished sync?
The ritual forces a hard reset. First, you have to emit the NLL terminator.
Oh, so NA.
So NA. Second, you wait for exactly 3 silent ticks a buffer of just under a second. Third, and this part is non-negotiable, you restart transmission using HAT encoding only.
Only height T, regardless of the data's actual temperature.
It doesn't matter. You have to reestablish that synchronization using the absolute highest integrity checks available.
This whole framework, it really does move us toward that idea of resonant computing, showing that the physical timing from phi and the phonetic structure are just as critical as the binary data itself.
What's fascinating here is the sheer resilience you get by aligning technology with these, intrinsic natural proportions.
Yeah.
It's built for stability from the ground up.
Yeah, absolutely. So what does this all mean for you? Given the system's intrinsic alignment with things like neural oscillations and light frequencies, what are the implications of designing computation that is truly, harmonious with biological systems? Something to mull over until our next deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something pretty dense, the math transition Phenomes specification.
Yeah, it's a really interesting document. It's this strange blend of hard data engineering, very precise math, and some, almost esoteric terminology.
And our mission today is really to unpack its core design, specifically how it encodes data based on a principle it calls heat.
And what's wild is that the whole system, its entire foundation, is rooted in the golden ratio, phi.
Okay, so let's just jump into that. This foundational constant, the system clock, isn't arbitrary at all, is it?
Not at all. The operational frequency, what they call phi, is derived specifically from phi cubed. That's about 4.236 hertz.
And why that? I mean, why phi cubed? Is there some kind of stability advantage to using a geometric constant like that?
It seems to be about setting an absolute, unchangeable cadence. And that precision, it forces a really strict limit. The longest any message can be is 64 syllables.
Which gives you a maximum time of, what, about 15.1 seconds?
Just over 15 seconds, yeah. It tells you right away. This is for very short, very quick burst transmissions, not continuous streaming.
And the data itself is, well, it's spoken through this system they call the HEX to syllable big ejection, or sigma.
Right. So every 4-bit nibble of your data maps directly to one of 16 defined syllables.
Like 0 is the syllable NA, and the hex F becomes SO.
Exactly. So your raw data is turned into this, this concise little vocal phrase.
And that phrase then gets classified by what they call the critical metric, D0, the heat classification.
Yep. It uses a Q8.4 value, which is a fixed point format, built for speed, to sort the transmission into one of 3 states: cold, warm, or hot.
So you're not just sending data, you're sending it with a temperature that dictates its own rules.
That's a great way to put it.
Cold is the baseline, right? From hexadecimal decimal 0 up to 232. But if you hit 794 or higher,
you instantly jump to the high T state, the most robust one.
And that jump in heat completely changes the encoding.
Completely. Cold encoding is minimalist. Your 32-bit identity, AO0, is just 1 syllable, barely any overhead.
But in the hot T state, it's all about integrity, not speed. The phrase length balloons to 21 syllables.
And crucially, that 32-bit identity gains an extra parity nibble, P, making it 9 syllables long by itself.
And that parity nibble P has to be the XOR sum of all the original 8 nibbles. Is that right?
It must be. It's an immediate self-contained integrity check baked right into the identity.
Wow. So every hot T packet is basically self-verifying from the get-go.
Yeah. And this whole system is managed within what they call the finite state grip ladder,
which is just a state machine, S equals 0 through 15. But the names, Piercer, S-Dosh, and the terminal state is called Skaith. These sound incredibly high stakes.
They really do. They imply a very deliberate, high-consequence kind of operation. And moving between these states is driven by the S-arrow gate verbs.
These 4-bit opcodes like rethread and lock.
hmm And this is where you see the real design philosophy. The verbs are defined by these 3-bit triad phenomes, which connect them to Boolean logic.
So an action is also a logic gate.
Exactly. Rethread, which they call Nilex, is literally defined as C and O,
Yeah.
and also resurrection,
Resurrect.
because C and O is a reversible logic gate. It's the only one of these where the system can, recover from that state. LOC, or low class, is defined as not or terminal.
So even with all this structure, it can still fail. They have these dissonant triggers.
Of course. A hot parity mismatch is an obvious one, but there's also a strict rule against unauthorized silence.
So you can't even pause for too long during a transmission.
Any gap longer than a single tick time, delta T, and it triggers a desync immediately.
And when that happens, there's a mandated recovery ritual.
Yep. You have to emit the NLL terminator, SOS, LSO, NA, wait for 3 silent ticks, and then you can only restart using the HOT encoding, the most robust one.
So it forces a restart in the most secure mode. It refuses to resume normal operation until stability is proven.
Right. It demands 2 straight successful hot-T phrases before it'll even consider going back to adaptive heat. It's an absolute preference for integrity over efficiency when things go wrong.
That really tells you everything about its purpose.
It does. Which leaves a final provocative thought for you. If LOCK, low class, is defined as not terminal, and the terminal state scath only allows that single transition out, what does that imply about the system's identity? Does it only achieve cessation by actively, negating its own existence?
Okay, so let's get into this. For today's deep dive, we are tackling something notoriously difficult to parse the control system for the tesseract rhombus. And we're not even touching the hardware. This is all about its brain, the custom interface. It's called the Hexagon Control BS.
Right, and specifically the part that runs on it, the language engine.
Exactly. Our mission, really, is to figure out why it works this way.
I mean, that's the whole question, isn't it? It all starts with these very rigid sets of data. You have the grip identity core, which is just called A0. Think of that as its unique fingerprint.
Okay, it's identity.
And then you have what are called transition edges, or E0. And those are the grammar rules, the non-negotiable laws and how this thing can operate.
Let's start with the timing, because that's maybe the weirdest part of it all. The system clock is based on phi cubed, which gives you, about 4.236 hertz. So every single command, every tick, is roughly 236 milliseconds, a quarter of a second.
And here's the kicker. The rule is absolutely strict.
Yeah.
1 syllable per tick. You never, ever skip a beat.
Why? Why bake an irrational number into your timing signature? It seems deliberately complicated.
Oh, it is deliberate. And that's the first big insight for you. That irrational timing makes it basically impossible for any external system to sync up and predict the next state change perfectly.
So it's a security feature, an anti-brute force measure.
Exactly. This system is built for absolute verification, not for speed.
But wait, a mandatory quarter-second delay for every single syllable? That sounds, painfully slow. What critical system can afford that kind of latency?
A very high-stakes one, where what matters most is commitment. And it actually measures that commitment. The core state is tracked with something called GLP commitment, or D0.
0, right?
It's a Q8.4 fixed point number. You can just think of it as a super precise internal thermometer. In hex speak, they call it the heat ladder.
So the DO number, the heat, tells the system how much effort is being put into a command. And the language itself has to state it.
Precisely. For instance, a very low heat level, let's say 0 to 19, has to be spoken as NANENO. Every action that follows is prefaced by this spoken verified commitment level.
Okay, so the timing keeps it slow and rhythmic. What tells it what it can say next? That must be where the transition edges, the E0 file, comes in.
Yes. The E0 defines what's called the legal next T graph. It's the choreography. It makes sure the system can't just jump from one state to the totally illegal one.
It's the guardrails.
Perfect way to put it. So if you're in state 05, the only possible next state is 06. In the language, that means the syllable TE must be followed by TI, no exceptions.
Which brings us to HEX speak itself.
The language is surprisingly simple at its core. The language engine only uses 16 syllables. They map directly to the hexadecimal digits 0 through F.
So you have NA for 0 all the way up to SO for F.
That's it. It's a one-to-one mapping.
So a nibble, 4 bits, is one syllable. Since the main data blocks like the identity core are 32-bit words, that translates to 8 syllables. Always. There's an example here from the A0 data. If the system reads its own ID at location AA0 and the value is 19E3779B,
It has to verbalize it.
it speaks NEKESI, no, to 2K-ko. The machine is literally talking to itself to confirm its own parameters before doing anything.
And once that identity is spoken and verified, it can unlock the actual commands, the gate actions.
Yeah.
Those are the F0 opcodes. But, and this is critical, no gate will fire without enough commitment on that heat ladder.
So no D0, no action.
No D0, no action. It links the command directly to that verified effort.
So what are the key actions? What does it actually say?
Well, the main ones are tied to the lowest value syllables.
Okay.
We have nullix, which is an AE or 01, and that's a rethread command for recalibration.
Okay.
Vartis or AA is bind, a lock. Slarnyok, no, is phase flip, which is a major state change. And then Loklaz, Taya, is release.
And if the heat ladder, the D0 commitment, isn't high enough?
The engine just rejects the command. It won't bind, it won't rethread. The commitment has to be spoken first.
So pulling this all together, what we have is, well, it's not just a control system. It's a linguistic one. It's slow, it's rigid, it's fully verbalized, where the timing is deliberately obscure and every single action requires a spoken promise.
It is. So here's the final thought to leave you with. You have these variable width identity words, these fixed point heat measurements, all inside this incredibly precise language, given all that complexity and that 1 syllable per quarter second pace. What do you think the full functional output of the Tesseract rhombus actually looks like, especially when you realize even the emergency overrides like OVR tow or OVR netTI are just built right into the grammar, suggesting this machine is designed from the ground up to talk its way out of any problem?